options, do we?
No.
We can.
Well,
Yeah.
all right, we'll skip. I do work on this. All right, Joe Ballantyne's not here tonight, so I'm Dave Spurley, the vice chair, will be conducting the meeting this evening. We'll call the meeting to order. Our first item is approval of the meeting minutes from April 8th and April 15th. Looks like Joe Paradiso, good evening, is the only one online from our group, so that makes good evening of us.
Yep,
right?
we're good, we're a quorum.
I just was not here for the 15th, so.
Neither was I, but that's okay, we can abstain, just
Oh.
because we're not
We're still-
voting, we can abstain.
We're
We have
still
a
good.
quorum.
Okay.
Yep.
Perfect.
I will move to approve, can I do both?
Yeah.
As one motion?
Yep, you
I
can
can
do
move
both,
to approve both sets of minutes.
and either one of us can second it, we just can't vote.
Okay.
So, I'll second it.
All right, any discussion, comments?
Nope.
All right, Joe said no. All right, all in favor, we're voting for both at the same time.
Do April 8th
Okay,
first.
perfect. For the April 8th meeting, all in favor?
I,
I have to abstain from April 8th, but I don't have.
so you're an abstention on April 8th, okay?
All right, the April 15th minutes? In favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Three, so Joan and I will abstain.
Same, and we're good.
All right, moving on. All right, for the chair comments, Al's here with us. Anything? Oh, no, sorry,
You're the chair.
Chair, yeah.
I don't have any comments.
Okay,
Joe's
good.
not here tonight. Over to Al with the liaison reports.
Selectmen are eager to have you guys continue forward. I think you'll next be invited back to the selectmen's meeting probably towards the end of May sometimes, or sort of a progress report update, what the numbers are looking like. In the interim, our first selectwoman wants to spend some time with her staff and perhaps the architect and others, making sure that our town employees, those that run the facilities department, the IT department, that they have a chance to understand the plans and make sure that this is a building we're prepared to operate. So that'll happen over the next couple of weeks.
And Tom, you had some initial meetings, correct, with the facility group, or you have not yet?
Just preliminary.
Okay. All right, thanks, Tom. All right, anything else? Good. All right, do we have any invoice packets to review this evening?
None this time.
No.
All right.
And no budget line item transfers either.
Perfect. I guess that moves us on to the Colliers update. John?
Anything new or earth shattering outside of what we'll be discussing on the new business, I'll defer to that
Okay.
discussion.
Hey, Dave, this is Mark, and I just want to add to the comments by Al. John is going to be scheduling a meeting with the facilities staff to review the drawings and do a page turn and solicit their feedback, just so you know.
I was gonna mention that in item number 12. but You gotta have me, Mark.
Okay.
Still a bummer.
That's it.
Can you repeat that again? All right, thanks, John. QA&M update, anything, Tom?
No, we have just started to gather our thoughts regarding putting together the next set of documents. So that, that directive is underway, and we've met with Peggy and Joe. We're getting a little bit of feedback regarding allocation of some of the spaces in the building. But we're really not taking action on that until we get very clear directive, which we still don't have. So, but we're underway.
Okay. Sounds good, thanks, Tom. Any questions, comments, Tom?
Excuse me, David. I think I saw Felicia.
Felicia did put her hand.
Oh.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see that.
Well, maybe with our participants, we could.
Okay, so we could add,
Hold on, let's see. And these, then we can move, oh, here we go. That's that.
I know, wow, you're doing really good there.
What's that?
Don't end the meeting.
Yeah, please don't end the meeting.
Looks like that's it. All right.
Thanks all. I wanted you to know I was here.
Okay,
Good?
okay,
I
so,
think we're good.
so for the public,
Public comment?
if anybody wants to comment, please raise your hand. You may want to comment ahead of time if there's specific things. I think you may have put somebody else up, by accident.
That's Pete.
Oh, this,
Yeah,
okay,
we're-
sorry,
we're good.
okay, we're good. Sorry, so any comments that you would like at this point? No hands raised.
All right. At this point, we'll move on to new business. An overview of the special meeting that was held on April 15th, 2024. So, John, is this what you kind of want to go over here?
Actually, no, that's more for the next item. I think Joe was just looking to have a, summary overview of the meeting from the 15th, which, essentially was just compiling the documentation or the costs associated with the recommended scope and, reviewing that with the associated parties and getting to the bottom line of the proposed roughly $3.5 million additional cost for the project based on the building committee's recommendations.
Okay, so are we gonna go kind of into a deeper dive on that prior to approving it for the Board of Selectmen for review?
Well, that's actually, I believe, the intent of the next item on the business.
Okay.
As far as looking at that, I'll wait till we get to the next item.
Okay.
AJ, anything you want to add, or Joe, that may have been at the April 15th meeting?
So, I mean, that's
Yeah, I read the
pretty
notes.
much it.
What's that?
That's pretty much it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what I read, too. I read through
it was a
the.
pretty simple meeting, it was a
Okay,
pretty direct agenda.
not too
Okay.
many changes from the prior. So,
All right, so I guess we can jump into item 11. Discussion of building spaces and uses based on recommendations of advisory committee. So this is your handout here, John, that you put this together.
Yes, as I understand it, what Joe was looking to do with respect to item number 11 was to address the documentation that I shared and passed out from the advisory committee's report. This has the 11 by 17 larger page is the pullout from that report. And then the floor plans that are associated with those references on the far left column within that report. And what was requested by Peggy in a meeting yesterday with Joe and I was to take the recommended scope of April 8th and to address some potential cost-cutting measures to bring that value of the $3.56 million below $3 million. She is a little, I think, uncomfortable. Al, you may be able to speak to this more so, but would be more comfortable if the figure was under 3 million than over 3 million. So I believe Joe's intent was to, in the meeting tonight, look at areas where, some of those savings could be obtained. And I believe 2 of the areas specifically were associated with the performance spaces and also the new playground line item. The playground line item is $225,000, and what was allocated for the performance spaces is presently at $479,000. So I think Joe was at least looking at those 2 line items initially to consider,
Right.
scaling back.
well, we also have site upgrades and patio as well. So that was a big add
Right,
that
there
we
was some
put
additional
in.
costs there.
Correct, and
So
we
that line item-
reduced it to.
We did reduce it,
suit
so.
certain number, what number were we carrying for that? Was this?
450.
450.
450, correct.
So, Yeah,
I mean, we had numerous discussions on the performance spaces, right?
well, there's,
And there's a
John,
line,
yeah, John really wanted to go into more detail, but unfortunately, he's confusing so there's two types of theater spaces. There's producing theater spaces and there's presenting theater spaces. This would be a presenting theater space. The town of Madison is not going to produce theater. So you're not going to underwrite, you're not going to hire the actors, you're not going to do that. So presenting theater spaces are not under the same criteria that producing theater spaces are. You're either an equity shop or you're non-equity. We're not required to go under equity as a presenting theater. The people that would come in and rent the space for use for theater, are community theaters. If a professional theater group came in, they would make sure that they would take care of the requirements that were needed for their actors. Many equity actors don't go through those requirements when they do community theater. In fact, Madison Lyric Stage is a community theater. Most of their actors are equity, and those requirements are not held because Madison Lyric Stage is a non-equity thing. And equity performers can do what they want. It's almost like it's usually less money, less whatever, but it may be a project that they've always wanted to do. So for instance, like Angels in America, we have people coming from all over New England. I put a few of them up at my house, so, but they wanted to do it. They were all equity, but they weren't getting paid at that scale or, to my knowledge, at that scale. And so those are the types of things that I wanted to make sure our requirements as a quote unquote presenting theater or having a space for community theater to work would not have the spaces that the professional things are needed. So if you've gone through those things, none of those requirements are required of this theater space. We're presenting, we would be basically renting out space and gaining revenue from that rental space in order for people to put on their productions, but we would gain the revenue from the rental and potentially concessions if we have concessions in that open lobby area. So that would be, to me, where the money would be garnered. We could even, potentially sell T-shirts or do things like that. But those are the types of things that's the difference between where we went to, which was, the legacy theaters and equity theater, Good Speeds and equity theater. These are standards that have to be met in theater. So it's the people that are doing it outside of Broadway, the people on Broadway are getting the same treatment, so to speak. But when you dive to the next level, which is presenting in a community theater, it's not a requirement. So, and most people take those positions to either do that specific performance, gain that role so that they can add it to their resume to get to the next level. Broadway.
So are we having that conversation now?
well, there was an item that Ann brought to our attention on one of the previous meetings on the 8th, right? They were gonna have a separate meeting to discuss it.
Yeah, and if this is what that's supposed to be, I think Joe and John should be here for that, I think.
I didn't realize John wasn't gonna be here.
Right, so that, because he really felt very, very strongly in this, and I don't want to do something with him not being here.
Mhm.
I think there needs to be a full discussion, the other side of the coin is, as a presenting theater, and both the folks at the Legacy and I believe at Good Speed said, that's great, there's a real need along the shoreline for community theater space, and that large space with, specifically the stage in the gymnasium has a drop floor and you can fly scenery. And it's got wings and there's some capability there that doesn't exist pretty much along the shore.
Mhm.
It really doesn't. So it's a unique opportunity for us to capitalize that, not only for the space, but also for the revenue portion of it.
Mhm.
So I'm not sure what else. I mean, I know we could go through item by item.
It feels like a bit of
I
a chicken and
don't-
egg situation.
Right.
We're gonna have a budget conversation about it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that we were down to around that $3 million, and then the three items that were just brought up were the stage, the landscaping and the playground, right?
Right.
Put us at that $700,000 range.
Mhm.
And we had reduced the landscaping from 500 to 300 to get it in the, kind of in the scope that we're looking for, but.
Yeah.
I mean, it's gonna be a detailed
Right.
conversation
Mhm.
about this, because clearly it appears at this point, one of them's gotta go. And,
And so that's something that we can look at, but it's also from a design standpoint, we want to design for future. So maybe there's future fundraising that gets this info, that like outside private fundraising, once the project's done, outside fundraising would not be considered going against any bonds. It's the project's done, we paid for it, blah, 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 blah. So those are things that can be done. A lot of, we could fundraise for several things outside, but we want to get that information from bond counsel as well. If we're driving towards a number, then I think we need to look at each of those items that are here. Because I think, until we know what I think we're at a chicken and egg, till we know what the configuration of Beach and Rec and Youth and Family Services is actually going to be and what that does to costs, quite frankly, I think it's going to be difficult for us to then say, where else are we going to save? Because I think that's gonna be, that's changing, so. And really the main stage plus the tiers, plus. There was another piece.
but
Oh,
we had,
yeah, but we had the Academy Street redesign got back in?
No,
Okay, oh, that's the courtyard. Okay.
it's in the
Block
all in.
Street. I'm sorry. I was one up. So I think one of the things we gotta look at is where. I think it's good to see what.
But
Came
we-
through.
yeah, I mean, we have concurrence on the stage in the front, correct? On the, what are we calling that, our?
Not necessarily,
Besides-
no,
Recital space?
not necessarily, because that is a fairly expensive cost. For something that could be potentially, you could put risers in. For what that state, it's gonna be 18 inches off the ground, correct me if I'm wrong, Tom?
Well, I
18
think
inch-
that's only if we redo the stage, right? If we choose not to.
Right,
And
that's,
provide,
yeah, lowering
and
the
and provide
existing-
access somehow, right?
The access, if it's ADA,
From
it's
the
not gonna be
backside.
accessible, it's gonna cost more to get access to that.
Well, if let's have a lift or something.
But that's what I'm saying, that's gonna cost more than the redesign. We talked about that actually in the February. Which meeting did we talk about?
The
Is that a
existing-
fair assessment, Tom?
Regarding accessibility,
Yeah.
we were struggling to put a lift or to create a footprint for a lift up to the existing stage height, putting in the lift and then maintaining it was actually going to present more cost and more long-term maintenance issues than just removing the existing stage and building a new stage at 18 inches off grade, which would have a ramp access behind it. And this is in regards to the recital hall stage.
Right,
John, now that you're on, I just wanted to repeat what I had said earlier. The requirements for equity are not required when you are presenting theater. When you are producing theater, they are. If you claim you're an equity shop, then you have to go by the equity rules if you're producing. If you're presenting, this is mostly for community theaters that are in the area, in our own town, Madison Lyric Stage, Madison Arts Society for music concerts and things like that. So the requirements for equity would not be required for this theater. Those go out the door.
Okay. I don't know how that matches with expectations. Their expectations though as equity actors, but
Well, equity actors still perform in community theater. Their requirements are different when they do those performances. Most of the community theater that you see throughout the shoreline have equity theater. So if you go to the Cape, there's a community theater group that works there. Most of those people are equity actors. They choose to do those roles either because they like the director of the show or want to get that role on their resume, even if it is in a community theater space rather than a true equity shop. So
Okay.
equity, in fact, Madison Lyric Stage gets all equity. And they're not an equity shop. They are considered a non-equity.
I appreciate that feedback. What about the additional issues though? The interrupting of sports events, or recurring leagues, there's a lot of other things that were mentioned in that message that I sent.
Right, and I think that programming wise, I think.
Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but it sounds like we're having that conversation now
Yeah.
about the community space. And if we want to, I'm fine, but if we don't, then I'd rather move on to something else. If we're-
Well,
able to do
ultimately,
that.
we have to have a discussion at some point, right? So if we wanna plant the seed in our heads and move it to a special meeting, we can do that. Or,
Yeah, but I think once again, until we actually know what is gonna be changed between Beach and Rec and Youth and Family Services and what that will be, it's gonna be hard for us to then to say, okay,
We need to make up this much.
yeah, how much do we actually really need to make up? So I think we can't, to me, we could go through this exercise, but, and obviously if we save more money, great, but,
Yeah.
you know, I'm looking at this, and if we say, no, this is something we're not gonna recommend, but we do recommend outside groups start fundraising in order to complete this project. I've had people come up saying, what do we need to do for fundraising if we need anything? And I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm not sure yet until we know the numbers and what we're actually gonna recommend to the Board of Selectmen. So, but the design needs to understand ultimately what the space is gonna require and what can be done. So the other thing I'd hate to do is get this fundraise and then the gym shut down for a year while it gets renovated. So the stage gets done and the lighting and the soundproofing and things like that. So if it can be done at the same time, I think that makes more sense and it's less money and less impact on the
Yeah.
actual building.
I mean, I have similar questions to John about the programming also of it and how that affects, you know, the ability for us to use the space. So I guess from a budgeting perspective, though, I'm wondering if is there a more, I guess, broad stroke we can use to say there is a $3 million delta here instead of a $3.6 million delta that we can get to? We're comfortable telling the Board of Selectmen to move forward with the budget at that, and then we reconcile later, or do we need to have every detail ironed out before we do
we
that?
need to move Tom forward, so we're not going backwards, right?
Right.
So whatever we
Right.
do, he's got a design for it, and if it
Right.
becomes an ad alternate at bid time, it does, but it needs to be in. But we can't take something
Right.
out and think we're gonna add it in later.
But everything we've talked about is at alternate right now
Well, the one thing I think
Right.
too, John,
from the 15.
we just have a plug number for that stage, right?
Yes.
That number was not estimated, so.
I mean, yeah,
that's
same
just-
with the
That's just a number.
playground and the site work, right? So we've
Same
got
thing with the,
$1.2
playground.
million in
That's what I'm saying.
plug numbers.
That's what I'm saying, we have estimates for everything else except these are just plug numbers.
And
So
I think
it
we could
depends what our
tweak that.
confidence is in the 479,000 or number that we're carrying.
Well, yeah, I think the 400 and change that goes with main stage and the bleacher system, 440 something. And the recital stage and the operable partitions. So that's 400, 42. So you're talking about 500,000, okay, for the stages. Let's just put it in a lump. You've got 225 for the playground and 450 for upgrades to the patio. If somewhere along the way we garner $200,000 or $300,000, that changes our conversations. And like you said, are these numbers really real, and should we be requesting more
Well,
focus?
I don't think we're that far off that
I don't think
that
we're
the
that
479 becomes 200, but Joe, you had a comment, Paradiso?
No, I was just gonna say two things. One is, I think last meeting, we voted to go to construction documents to get more accurate or finite estimates, and that'll tell us where we are budget-wise. So I was just going to recommend we punt this conversation till we have a little bit more data and have a special meeting specifically to discuss the theaters. So it keeps coming up each meeting. So I think once we have more information, we should have a special meeting to sort of
Yep.
put it to bed, build clarity around it, make a decision, and kind of move forward.
When are the design documents gonna be completed, though? It's for review.
The construction.
I mean,
docs.
CD.
Yeah, I'm sorry, it's instruction documents with updated estimates.
So that's,
I mean, Tom can speak to that more so, but Tom, you need about at least 3 months to complete your construction documents, correct?
Yeah, it's about 12 weeks, 10, 12 weeks.
okay, so,
Now, Tom, if I'm not mistaken, isn't the in budget include the renovation of the gymnasium, the auditorium in the front, and the artist room upstairs? It includes those three, so we're good. I would agree, Joe, it's probably maybe not the perfect time for this conversation, but we're gonna have to have it sooner than later because
Yeah,
it's part of the in budget.
I think we're just too much in the weeds and the details at this point.
Yeah,
so my concern is knowing the timeline in order for this to go to referendum in November. We have to have a hard number in August.
But I think we could.
I'm just saying, that's,
I mean,
okay.
I
just
think,
wanna make
I
sure
think
that
from
we're
a
on-
design aspect, correct, Tom, that the stage is kind of its own entity, the one in the gymnasium.
Yes.
So the one in the gymnasium, the stage, the proscenium, that all gets cleaned up and restored as a part of the base renovation work. So the stage will get a new cert cleaned up, the face will get cleaned up. The allocation, let's call it allowance, $400,000 for fit out of the stage. That's all equipment and infrastructure that gets layered on top of it. So just so you know, it's curtains and it's fly equipment and lighting and controls.
What about sound? Is that included in the base? Sound?
No,
You're just getting it cleaned up.
Cleaned up, okay. So I don't want.
You're getting a floor.
Yeah,
I just don't want sound, but not soundproofing per se, but sound. Acoustical changes that would be
You're
required.
not getting any of
Right,
that.
but I'm just saying, if that's part of the second 400 or whatever, I just want to make sure that that's not lost, because I don't want that to be a surprise either. I'd rather have a number that we can say, guess what, that's gonna get moved out, we'll finish this by either one way or the other, either fundraising or something like that, but I think we need to have anything that would create something that you could do a performance on and still have, you
Yeah,
know.
I think what you're getting is the infrastructure for the theater. The furniture, fixtures, and equipment, I don't believe that's included.
But I mean, I think this is, is this really a hard decision for us though? Right? If we have 479,000, that's a plug number for this.
We get what we get with that.
What's that?
We're gonna get what we get with that 400,000. I mean, the budget,
That's what I'm saying. So why, if we need to get down to the 3 million, I don't think it's that hard to just move that to the add alternate line.
yeah,
Well,
we're not at a point where we can start adding, we can't start adding stuff at this point.
But, well, yeah. Go ahead, Mark, you had a question or comment?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, Tom, for something like this, would you need to engage a theater consultant?
yes.
So what we could in theory do is have Tom engage a theater consultant. It would be an ad service. And then we could work with that theater consultant to say, okay, what could we afford for $400,000 if that's the number we want to go with?
maybe have some packages.
I think Mark, where I was headed was we've gone through each line by line, right? We've gone through probably 10, 12 times, move things in, move things out. And if we need to get from 3.6 to 3 million, we have these three items, the playground, that money that's set aside for the theater upgrades and the, and exterior site improvements. I mean, I think it's not that hard for us just to move forward and move those three things out.
The problem is, that I have a concern is that, you know, the number one request was music and theater. If we're just cleaning up the stage and not giving any infrastructure, as far as what the people that, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I guess John could add in, I mean, John was on the committee, you know, that did all the research, but I mean, we are giving him that stage in the front for music performances or whatever
No,
else.
that's off of this as well.
No,
Okay, so we're
No,
gonna
no,
keep
no.
that part in.
The-
'Cause the new recital stage is not a performance stage.
no, but the recital stage, the art room and the gym are the three things that were in finished, right? Correct?
Yes.
For the
but
15 night.
The recital stage, remember, is lumped in with the gym stage.
Oh, it is? So the
It
four,
is now, yes.
479.
Those were combined on that line.
Yeah.
oh, it's
I-
both for four.
So
Yes,
this
it's
is-
both of those. That's
Oh.
combined.
Do we have what the new lumps are? Because I still have it from April 8th, or did things change?
No,
Did
they have not changed.
They haven't changed, okay. So the recital stage change, which is 37,000, is in there, and then the cleanup of is 126 is already in there. So if we look at, okay, so we can check. So this is referendum. This is gonna get us to the 15.9. So, and this is what was
Mhm.
was recommended, but there was a voted
That's
on
three
still.
point seven.
Correct.
Mhm.
So, and really, yeah, you can see here that none of this, correct me, none of the site construction area okay. I'm just looking. Trying to. Huh,
Are you looking at the April 8th?
I'm looking at referendum scope, okay,
April
so
8th, correct.
scope to meet budget. Is that what we're saying, the 15.9 is the column D?
That is correct. Column D is the scope to meet the referendum budget.
So that's the baseline, and everything else we've shifted to add alternates.
Correct.
from a Design standpoint, correct, Tom? Yep, okay.
Yep.
So column D doesn't have any of these things in here. Which is the scope to meet budget.
But column E is the 3.6.
Right, but column D
so
is
With what
the,
we had alternates.
Correct, all of them.
right. So the referendum, what if we stayed with the referendum budget is actually higher than what we're over. We're at 3.5 over there, that is at 3.9 over. Because we.
But we're going off our recommended though, right? Is the number that we're using
The E?
for the referendum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, the referendum, the 15.9, this is what's happening, right here.
Correct.
So
That's column
the
D.
stage is
D,
not,
D.
so yeah, column D,
Mhm.
nothing is happening to the stage in column D. Nothing is happening for the new recital stage in column D either.
Right.
That's correct.
So none of those are gonna happen for the 15.9.
Correct.
The rebuild of,
Correct.
The rebuild, the cleanup, nothing. Correct?
I think it gets cleaned up. I mean, that.
Gets
No.
cleaned up and it gets cleaned up and you get a couple areas and you get you get a shell. It's
Well,
weather tight, it's weather tight, you have some finished areas. You get a structurally sound building. That's what we said you get for the 15.9.
Right.
You don't get stage improvements.
No, there is no stage
the
improvement.
stage.
No.
placement.
Right, not, all of that is out of there. So
It's just not possible at this point in time.
can we
for that
go,
much money.
so if we're saying, I know it's a little money, but we're at 210 for the new sanitary system. Is that only the academy portion? Or is that the entire thing? For all the
That's the
buildings?
whole thing.
That
I
is,
feel
that's
if we
the whole
keep-
thing.
It serves all the buildings.
Correct.
It serves all the buildings, so maybe we can request
We
money.
tried. We
Yeah.
tried. It was discussed and they said, no, it's gonna serve all the buildings, but it's gonna come out of the project. I don't know if that was at the board meeting, one of our last meetings.
The other issue too there, Joe, because I attended one of the meetings they had here, is that the way that the town has their parcels down there is one that they all go through and you have to tie them all in under this project. You can't really separate them out.
Right. Well, I don't think you can give up the playground because you're gonna be digging that up for the new septic system. I think that has to stay in. The recommended.
But is there?
I
a
think,
small-
again, I think the board took that on as well to figure that out.
The Board of Selectmen?
In one of the town meetings, I think that came up and they sort of put a pin in it, whether it's in this project or another project.
Oh, is that for the budget hearing? Is that what you were?
Yes.
Yeah, there were a few pins that got put in. I was trying to track it. So currently, if we're at 3.586 and we get rid of the playground and we don't do any site upgrades, and I know we can have that discussion, whether it's site upgrades or the stage, that's gonna get us. So it's one of those two pieces. And so maybe we say, all right,
Or maybe some from each.
or some from each.
Well, that's what I'm thinking.
Like, okay, so the stage goes down to 200 and
Or goes
the
to,
site upgrades go down to 250. And so then, and then 225,
A playground.
the playground goes.
But is
I mean, the
that,
stage
is
would be
that a reasonable
300.
thing to even put forward? What would 200 get us?
No, this gets us down under, this
No,
this
for
removes
stage
600.
improvements, is that a reasonable thing to even consider?
Yeah, I think we're splitting hairs here.
Well, I think what it does, it gets the cleanup, it gets the infrastructure, and then you fundraise for the rest. Or you put it in long-term projects for the rest.
And that's how we got to that, I forget what column it was with all the ad alternates. So it was like, there's the base building that you get,
Yep.
and then how do you do it right? That's the ad alternates. And what we're trying to do now is split hairs and value engineer. And again, I just think that should be maybe a special meeting. What we put forth is what we put forth at this point.
I agree.
Okay.
If the board of selectmen feel more confident at a $3 million delta versus a $3.6 million delta, we tell them there's a project we can deliver for that. There are some areas of that we will
Well, I think
pull levers
Decisions will
in.
be needed.
I think what they wanted from us were these two things. One is what do you get for the budget? And then what do we recommend? Right? Those are the alternates. And then they can go back and figure out, can they fund that? And that's what they owe us. So
Well,
rather than
something
us try to rather than us try to whittle that number down any further and split hairs, it's up to the Board of Selectmen now to figure out, can they fund those ad alternates? And if they can't, then we have to go back and figure it out.
Well, it sounds like that number is 3 million, Joe.
Yeah.
But this was a conversation, not necessarily something that was voted on or agreed on, correct? Was that put
But
forth
it's
in a
the
Board of
target.
Selectmen meeting?
It was a Board of Selectmen meeting. So that funding is not up to this committee.
No, it's not.
Let me just take a step back here. I think where we're at is the selectmen are looking to this committee to come up with its recommendation as to if we're able to provide additional funds of something 3 million or less, what is your recommendation as to what should be included? You may also identify and add extras that go beyond that. But I think the selectmen are looking for the recommendations from this body as to what would you include if you had another $3 million? So that's where I think we're at. And
So
keep in mind that
That's the last column,
Yeah, it's the last column.
unless we're gonna go back and revisit it all.
Yeah.
Correct. Except that our recommendation number is high.
Recommendation.
I can add or interject. If we were to take those 3 line items that we were referencing, what I did, I've got another column now,
Oh, jeez.
Listen, if you make it up to Z, we're in big trouble.
Yeah. If we take $100,000 out of the performance spaces enhanced renovation line,
Yep,
and if we take the whole 225,000 out of the playground,
yep,
new playground line,
yep,
and we reduce the site upgrade amount from 450 down to 250.
yep.
Okay, that results, because that impacts your markups, don't forget too. So by
Oh, that's-
lowering those, you're lowering your markup
Okay,
costs.
got it, yeah.
That brings the delta down to $2,956,585,
Sold.
which is under $3 million that.
As requested.
So, and then we will get into the details and figure out, you know,
Well,
what we can and can't do for
When we
these.
have better numbers.
When
Exactly.
we have better numbers,
Okay.
and also.
Exactly.
When, because some other things may start shifting and we may, you know, something may get lowered, some things may get higher, and we may go, oh, we gotta cut more out of that.
Right. But then it will also be nice to get into some of the details of this, because
Right.
We're not there.
we need to
Yes.
know, is it brick or concrete for the sidewalk? Is it this kind of
Well,
lighting
it-
package or that kind of lighting package for the theater, right? And weighing those options, those details
Mhm.
will help us like really land the plane, I think,
Mhm.
when we're a couple $100,000 here, there.
Because the other thing everyone needs to consider on this committee that I know it's, but there is actually several buildings in the future that are in CIP to start looking to renovate potentially, right? So you've got a town gym that's been on CIP for a while that potentially will get a renovation. How does that impact? Do we want to focus more sports oriented stuff and gain some space there? Do you know what I'm saying? There's the surf club. What kind of things could be hosted there versus what's at the community center? So there, I mean, those are long-term plan items, but I think we also, this building is gonna be used for years to come, and I think we need to look at that through the prism of what are the other things in the strategic plan that are recommended in CIP, and I'll bring my CIP book with me the next time we meet for the real detail conversation.
Well, and look, this building will evolve over time,
Mhm.
right? Even if we try to assign space to
It's
something,
gonna evolve.
10 years from now, it may move on to something else. So
Exactly.
We just gotta get, as you know, we're getting the building
Mhm.
up to code, getting everything new.
Right.
And
So
we
the only thing I'll mention, Austin, I don't know if from your perspective, we've got what the town has said they would like from all the survey work that was done. You sort of bring a different lens to this in that you get requests to utilize space by a bunch of people. Those are, some of this is not, it's not actual to me, because if you tell me what do I want in a car, I'm going to tell you a lot of great things that I would never actually use or do, right? So I think it's an important perspective to have. It's also important to have a perspective on what are people actually asking for that the town can't provide? Because we have a lot of space, to your point. We have gyms, we have meeting rooms, we have spaces around town that people can use. I don't know if there's a place that we can have an aggregated view of like, you're sort of the stack ranked order of, I get a lot of ask for this and I have
It's
10% capacity of that, right, or
it's-
whatever.
gym space. We have the town, not the Board of Ed, but the town has the town campus gym. That's our only gym space that we have, so.
And you can't program the school's gym spaces.
No.
So those are just shut down or off limits.
Right.
For the rest of the town's use.
Yeah.
Well, you gotta fit into the
Into
school
their-
schedule.
It's just scheduled.
Yeah, so
But they do. I
you
mean,
can,
you do. I mean, my kid was in youth and family service and they were at Brown for all the basketball. And we just redid Brown's gym. I mean,
Oh,
that was-
so youth basketball and rec basketball does use the schools,
Mhm.
uses Brown School, but there's still not enough space. Gym space, not only for, it's not just basketball, but anything that requires a gym, pickleball, indoor soccer. There's not enough. That's the request that we get is for, can I rent the gym for a birthday party? I can't, because we programmed the town campus gym for programming and I can't put anything else in there. Indoor spaces at a premium. Not only gym space, but just regular community space as well. We have the senior center.
I was gonna ask about that, if you program that as well.
We do, yeah.
They have a gym in there?
No, we have a fitness room, like a dance studio.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, we do program that for senior activities. We rent it for community groups. We rent all the rooms to community groups in the evening, both during the week and on weekends. But there's size constraints to the rooms there that don't necessarily fit for what people want. You know, if you want 80 people, you could use the cafe. If you want 10 people, we have a room for that, but it's that, you know, 30, 40 people that we just don't have a room for. We have the surf club that we rent for, you know, weddings and birthday parties all year round. And then every single Saturday and Sunday from Memorial Day to Thanksgiving, there's something in the surf club room. Yeah, I think if you're gonna ask me what's the biggest request I get is gym space.
Right. But because you don't program theater, you wouldn't get that request, correct?
But those two are also gonna be in conflict.
Right. No,
Right.
I understand that,
Programming
but,
for theater space and programming for gym space are the same space in this building.
right.
So,
If
Can I-
we're using the
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, just want to remind everybody that the pre-referendum committee that met to sort of dive into, okay, the town has unanimously said we want a community space. What does that mean? They did a really, really great job extensively of every week bringing in a different community group to interview and ask, you know, what would you like to see in this space? What could we provide that you don't have currently? And so I would just really encourage everybody to bring up that really comprehensive report again and just refresh your memory as to what's in there. If you haven't, I haven't looked at it in a while. I mean, it was pre-COVID, so my memory isn't too fresh, but I mean, Mark and I sat on that committee and we're there every week and we heard all these different voices. Obviously you can't serve every voice, but it's there for the record, put down as to what these different community groups, and you know, they did a really extensive job of reaching out to everybody they could think of as stakeholders in the community and sort of whittling down what would best serve this space. And it's all there in that.
If you also look at the advisory committee that met in conjunction with this group since the referendum, that group also provided details on what the community wanted through, you know, multiple surveys and, you know, hundreds of people responding to it. And it's pretty detailed. So I know all of you have copies of that. We're giving that a few times. I would definitely recommend reviewing that as well, because that speaks to.
This is the spreadsheet, but I think the actual
Yeah.
survey result, this is kind of aligns the survey results to the possible space usage. So
Bill-
that survey.
I
plus
believe it was
this
Bill.
is
Bill
very
provided
good.
us a nice PowerPoint of all the
Yes.
collated data.
Listen,
Yep.
if you all have copies of this, if you go to slide number 3.
Yep.
You'll see different categories with hyperlinks, the little blue lines. There's extensive detailed information from focus groups that we met with on culinary, studio art, theater, and one other that escapes me, but if you have to go online, if you click on those hyperlinks, you'll see that the focus groups provided.
Yeah.
Oh, I know.
Well, and we have reviewed those. I mean,
Yeah.
those were
Yeah.
shared with
That's-
Tom, and Tom's gone through.
Right.
That, just show that.
Yeah, it's in
I
that.
think, yeah.
So, and I think what we do is we wanna,
But you have to go online to get to the hyperlinks.
Yeah,
right,
but I think AJ's question was more of, in today's environment, what requests are you getting for use? I think
yeah.
that's.
no,
Yeah,
I
I
think
hear that
that's-
just-
Yeah,
if you're the rest for birthday parties is a different result than you're gonna see from community groups, right? It's,
right.
it's good for us to hear sort of different lenses and feedback.
Well, and I think that, not to segue to another point, but I think that's what Joe Valentine had discussed with John, is trying to take these rooms and just try to, not assigning things, but what's the intention going to be for these community
Right.
spaces, right?
And
To
that,
make sure we're hitting,
what's, yeah,
As much of that as we can.
yeah,
exactly,
with the budget that we have.
Right.
I think another thing to keep in mind is part of that report is also what are the revenue generating programming that goes in.
Right.
Because if we're gonna be incrementally adding things over time, we need to be able to generate some revenue to cover operating costs, and should be a consideration that we think about.
No, agreed.
Absolutely. So do we want to set up a special meeting for the deep dive after we get the details back as far as what may have changed cost-wise once?
So is that what you guys are working on now? Any updates to the layout of the third floor?
Yeah, Tom is working on the renovation to the family youth and service spaces. Based on a meeting with Peggy a week and a half ago or so.
I mean, I think I heard from Tom that he's waiting for formal direction. Or did I mishear that, Tom?
No, we're working on it. We have varying directives. We're waiting on a hard decision, but we're handling that directly with Collier's and Peggy's office.
You good with that?
Yeah, I think until we get, until we get that number and see how it impacts the overall budget, then we're gonna be able to more clearly really get into the weeds on the other pieces, I think.
Yeah,
I don't think there's gonna be, to be honest, I don't think there's gonna be a dramatic cost delta or difference between those renovations.
We'll finish the space one way or another.
well, you're moving from
Yeah,
A
you're
to
moving-
B, it's not.
Yeah, you're moving from the second floor down to the lower level, one portion of that, and then you're
Right,
consolidating some of those other spaces. I mean, as far as the cost savings, if that's what you're
Well,
referencing, I don't think you're gonna see a major swing as far as the, finishing costs and things, because you're still finishing out those spaces. You
But
may
not
not
to
have
the-
as many.
Not to the same level, correct?
You're
Not
not
as-
gonna have, walls. I mean, it's not gonna be subdivided per se, a
Mm.
couple of them, but, you're still gonna be, completing those rooms.
and what's the target for that date?
That's a question for Tom, I think. Then, hopefully next week, I think is, I believe what Peggy was hoping for.
Yes.
But if we're making adjustments to community spaces, is that what we're doing? I mean, are we?
It's going back to more of what the original look was, so rather than the upper level, it's my understanding at least.
I mean, are we changing capacity limits of the building with parking and everything from these changes?
I don't think-
I really don't want to get in the weeds with it. I really don't want the committee, designing and detailing with it, but there are issues associated, there are fallout issues associated with some of the things that we were being asked to change by reducing office space and increasing community room space. We're increasing the design occupant load of the building. So we're experiencing difficulties getting all the people out of the building. In addition to that, it's going to change the design loads on the septic system, because a community room, might have 30 or 40 people in it. And, if that community room is broken up into 3 offices, it might have 3 or 5 people in it. So we're working through these things, and we'll report back to the committee once we have a better idea of it.
Fair enough, but it sounds like we're not gonna get any cost savings from that.
Sounds like maybe.
And hopefully no increases.
Right.
I'm
Sounds like
sure.
it worries. We just-
Sure, it's gonna work itself. We'll figure it out. It'll work itself out. I don't know. I'll figure it out.
Are we comfortable with John's proposal to just drop those budget numbers and say, we'll work within these budgets and?
I mean, I think that's the best approach.
I think
Without any
I'm on
other-
board.
And then we can table any conversations in the future,
Right.
right? We can at least get over this hurdle.
Mhm.
So we have to vote on that, or
Okay, so,
we'd have to explain it?
I thought we actually voted on it last meeting.
Well, we're gonna drop.
Or the meeting before that, actually, where we said we were going to construction documents with these numbers.
Yeah, I think we're just talking about a very small change to drop some of the, some of these plug-in numbers for the, we're gonna drop the playground,
Mhm.
drop the site upgrades 200K and drop.
AJ, can I ask for you, so if just dropping the playground, mean we're gonna get rid of the current and no playground?
Means it comes out of the budget for this project.
Do you have any budget for
And the
new
board
one?
of
Well,
selectmen,
you're saying the playground comes out, but we keep the money in and put it elsewhere, or we just drop the playground and take the money out?
we don't, we
Keep the money out.
take the money out.
the playground comes out of scope for this project. Is our,
So the current one, right?
I thought there was a link between the expanded parking lot and moving that playground.
and then the board of selectmen take up the playground as a separate discussion point.
I think we leave it in just so it's on the radar. If they choose to do something else with it, then they can fund it else another way.
But we're not gonna get to the number they want us to get to if we keep it in.
Well, I think that's the
I don't think there was
recommendation.
a number they wanted us to get to, though. The last column is our recommendation.
So the question is, okay, this board needs to decide. Do we stick with the recommended budget and say to the Board of Selectmen, this is what we're recommending? You guys cut where you see fit and we will work with that? Or do we try to make that cut down under $3 million? Because that's another directive. That's not necessarily part of our charge, quite frankly. And try to go through the tea leaves and figure out to try to get to 3 million instead of 3.5.
I thought we did this already.
What, Joe?
Just that. I thought, again, last meeting, we updated it a little bit to put it forward, to put those numbers forward, those two columns, with all the ad alternates, to get to construction documents. I think we may even have voted on it already.
Yes, we did. We voted on,
It sounds,
Right.
it sounds like there's some
And
new
that was a week
information
ago,
that's
and I
come out.
believe
Now
that,
it's been requested.
We requested to
To-
relook at it and try to get the number under 3 million.
The delta
Yeah,
number.
The delta.
additional, yes.
Correct.
rather than proposing a $3.6 million increase,
Correct.
to propose a $3 million increase
Correct.
Okay.
Or less.
or less.
Or less. But it sounds like we took those three items. We got to.
right, so there could
Okay.
be other ways to fund that playground if that, or the Board of Selectmen can say, nope, we want to keep the playground in and fund something else.
We're making a suggestion, right?
Yeah, I mean,
A recommendation.
Basically, we're
But
making
we're-
a
we're
proposed-
just-
This is a proposed
Correct.
way moving forward.
Right.
Right. This is if
We're
you
gonna
want
get-
to try to get under 3 million, this is our best.
And we'll get,
Effort to
and
get
we'll
to
get
that point.
feedback from the board, I'm sure.
But I would suggest that we do it keeping the integrity of what we already approved at the last meeting. So we've
Yep.
got column D, which is what we recommend within the budget. We've got our recommendation of what we think we should be doing. And now we would have, unfortunately, Mark, a third column that says this is the refined budget from what we think we should be doing to hit a $3 million budget. I don't want to lose track of the work that we did to get to that 3.6 million. I think it was
Yeah, I like
valuable, and
Okay.
it ties back to what the town is asking for.
This is column F now, not column E. We're
I think
talking-
we can probably start to clean up the columns a little bit because there's only a few that are relevant at this point.
I mean, we keep them for now, and then when we do a presentation, we just narrow it to the ones that we need, right? So John, I 100% agree with you. So we say, this is our recommendation. You came back to us for 3 million. This is our best effort to get to that 3. And we-
And what things do you give up for us to get to that number?
Right, so
Yeah.
we took out the playground, we cut here, and we did, and we took the exterior will not be as robust, and neither will any
Stage. though.
stage
Improvements.
improvements.
Minor.
Okay,
That's good.
okay, so
Yeah.
I'm gonna request to open the agenda. because there's not a vote
Okay,
here. Do we want to vote on this or do we want to wait for Joe?
I think we can vote on it.
Yeah.
Is there a need for us to communicate this
Well,
very, very soon?
Very, very soon. That's what we're trying.
I mean, Thursday,
there's
right?
no hurry to vote on it because the selectmen are not expecting you to come back to them, let's say, for another month. So you're certainly, if you're ready to vote, that's fine. You don't, there's no timeline, no time pressure to cause you to vote tonight if you're not ready or if you're awaiting further information.
I would be more comfortable if Joe was involved.
I
in the
would be too.
conversation.
Okay, fair.
I would be too. Okay, so there's no need to open up the
We'll
agenda.
table it.
But I
We can draft up the column,
Yeah.
right, so that we can
draft up the
Already
column. And then
facilitate that conversation.
knowing that the changes that are happening to the internal building or not building of walls, since that isn't quote unquote a strong impact from what I gained here, then I think we should look to try to figure out a special meeting, or do we want to wait for Joe to be here for that too, timing wise? Just for the deep dive, John, of space and really getting into the nitty gritty, or do we need to wait for something to come back, more detail or more refined estimates from the architects?
Let me ask this question to give you a proper answer. How much, Tom, do you think that the design may change? And may it alter some of the configuration of some of the rooms that are in there that we would use? Because right now, all the advisory committee work is based on the layout kind of as is, with the addition of the column adding the two sections of the basement together.
I'm not really sure.
So maybe it makes sense for us to wait a little bit longer and get a little more detail on that before starting to try to assign what's going to happen in each of the rooms.
Well, I think we're not ready for that yet anyway, right? This was just the start of the discussion of really our item 11 of the building spaces and
Uses.
and the recommendations on the.
That I think we should proceed with. But actually assigning final utility to various rooms, it sounds like we're not there yet.
Okay.
Any more discussion on 11?
You know what would be helpful, I think, is so we're looking at, this was the one that was presented, correct me if I'm wrong, for reference, yes.
Right.
Okay, so I think when we go into the deep dive conversation, if we can get what the latest look is going to be and know where space would be 100% beach and rec, partial beach and rec, 100% youth and family services, partial use. Do you know what I'm saying? Something, so for instance, for the third floor, the upper level, the corner space was the youth and family services, this U8, but was also because they're not working on the weekends and this isn't going, and it's kind of an open space that potentially could be used as part of community space if there was, say, an art exhibit, or you could have that kind of thing. I think that was part of the thought process originally.
Right, Peggy actually referencing that specific space
Mhm.
made the comment that that would be a community space. However, Family Youth and Services had priority for the use of that
Right,
while they were in operation, obviously not on the weekend or, depending
unless they
on
do
the
something on the weekend that
But,
requires, yeah, okay.
but that was one of her concerns because that space, that room was shown as being subdivided with walls into private office spaces on the most recent plan.
Okay,
That was one of the requests she had made, is to take that space and revert it back to a community space. Family Youth and Services can still use it and access it, but is not to be dedicated strictly or solely for their use. and to be subdivided with, walls and creating separate offices.
Okay.
So
So I
that
think-
was one area in particular, and
Right.
she also,
I remember that
referenced
from
the
the
lower
original
level
presentation.
plan, which had this section here
Right.
on the northwest corner of the layout
Mhm.
being allocated for the family youth and services
Mhm.
usage. So that's what Tom is presently working on, is trying to, redistribute those spaces, redo the plans to account for that.
Okay. And then
That answers it.
that does. So once we see those, and I'm assuming it's two set, like, it's one set of plans, but there's the base plan and then there's the add-on. So if we only have 15.9 million, some of the things are not, or,
Well, the drawing package will.
Oh, you're
will
saying
be
you
all
make
inclusive.
adjustments?
yeah,
I think what she's saying is, do we need to make adjustments once he makes these changes to the 15.9 that we already looked at? Is that what you're saying?
yeah. I just want to make sure that
I don't
nothing.
know. I mean, I guess we'll know when that happens, but it doesn't sound like that number's gonna change very much.
I don't think so.
Drastic decisions.
No, I don't think
Okay,
that's.
so
change
yeah, if we can
dramatically.
see the new look of the building, I think that will help all of us kind of get a feel for how flows will happen and what would be used and what could be used in certain areas. Does that make sense? Because
Yeah, I
this,
guess I'm-
I keep coming back to this and I know some of this has changed significantly, so I just want to, and I think we can still tie it to what the needs were based on
Yeah.
the recommendations
Yeah.
from the design committee.
Yeah.
But it would be helpful to have kind of the latest, to be able to spread out and go, okay, this is the first level, this is what we're gonna use, and this is the
Well,
second.
and especially if you gain this level, this area on the upper level, right? What would you use it for in the evening, maybe, right?
Right.
If it's open.
Right,
So I guess the only thing I lost a little track of is why we're having this discussion now, like divvying up who uses what space for what purpose? Like, what is that? How does that help us make a better
I
decision?
think I think you look at, all right, if you require programming and you need, people are asking for meeting space here and and that type of thing. We're gonna have art space here. If we're gonna be doing, basketball and pickleball, and then, what happens stage-wise or whatever. So I think those types of things, if we have the current layout, it just helps you kind of in your mind see how the community would work in this space and utilize the space. And we may come up with some, extra space. I mean, I know there's a lot of community space, but
I don't think this task is that,
I mean, it's all community space.
well, it's, yeah.
Like, it's, if Beach and Rec gets that 900 square foot office, which I think is still up in the air, outside of what Youth and Family has, it's all community space.
Right.
It's all programmable space, but it's also rental space, meeting space, it's all the
Right.
same.
Right.
There's no differentiating, I don't think. I mean, if there's an art room, it's an art room,
Well, that's
but the
not-
other rooms
Right.
are all.
right.
That's what I mean, whether
Yeah.
you host
Well, if
a
somebody,
committee meeting here or a
if somebody
basketball.
wants to play cards in one room one night, you just
Right.
do that.
It doesn't-
But
I don't think it affects us from a budget perspective, from a construction
But-
document perspective.
Right.
But I
And
think it just, it doesn't affect, but I think it helps us if we see the current versus,
But we hit the target on
A lot of stuff.
on these items. The big tickets we've already addressed in our design.
Guys, can I make a recommendation?
Yeah.
I think it would be helpful if we tackle the issues with the big open question spaces like the gymnasium, the auditorium, the kitchen, things that are significant topics for discussion that we really need to settle on to understand the final design. The details of what goes in each of the rooms, we have to have that before we go to construction bids. But I don't know that we need to have it before we go to construction documents. Does that make sense?
We're already going to construction documents, so that's good to hear.
Oh, we're going to construction documents, not bids.
That was
Well-
voted on last time, so Tom's already
But the-
working on that.
the documents are coming together with the plan so we can put it out to bid.
But in order to move forward, with
That
figuring
needs to
out
be
I- If I could opine, I gotta be honest, I've designed 30 community centers. And not one building committee has gone through the exercise of determining ahead of time what activities are gonna happen in each room. They're multifunction rooms. So are you saying you can't play, you can't have a public meeting in the knitting room? I don't know
I
why.
don't think that's
Did I miss something? Why is this such
Yeah,
a big issue?
I agree with John. I think we need to really focus on the gym, the recital area, and the kitchen are, to me, the big three items that could be very impactful one way or the other on the budget, along with.
So are we saying whether we do them or not? Like,
We only have right now, we have our
Yeah,
15-9 budget, right?
right.
We're only outfitting what we have, and we're cleaning up, and we're painting the rest,
Right.
right?
yeah,
In the event we get the $3 million extra, right, or plus or minus, right? We're gonna go with our recommendation and fit out all these other things.
Right. And then we just,
Complete them, I should
But
say.
shouldn't we, I mean, can't we just pause?
But that
all of
doesn't
those
really need to
conversations
have,
until
it doesn't
that
really need to happen
results?
now, yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We have what we have for 15-9.
and then.
We
if
let
there's
the
more,
board
we
of
have
selectmen
this
process happen with the
Correct,
construction
correct.
document.
He's gonna
But
let him.
I also think that
The
the
dust will
Board of
settle, then
Selectmen
we
is
have-
looking for harder numbers. The Board of Selectmen is looking for more concrete numbers. So a rough estimate of 400,000 may not really work without,
Which is why we need to delay until we have the better numbers.
right.
Correct.
So the question is, how far down the road do we want to actually, I think that the reason that we wanted to have the discussion about the stage was whether or not that was actually going to make the final cut, so to speak. And I think that,
Well, and I think to your point,
For-
I think we first have to decide, or you, right, is that theater consultant in Tom's scope or is it not?
It is not.
Right, if it is not, then we would have to take action on having him hire a consultant with a certain value to move ahead to do an analysis of the current stage and what we could do, and they could estimate a cost, right? They could put an estimate together of what it would cost to get it to whatever level our committee decides it needs to get to perform whatever it is we want to perform or think we're gonna perform there, right?
Okay.
I think, I think that's what the approach that I would recommend.
That sounds like a
take,
valuable use of
right? And if
time.
that's $20,000 or whatever that number is to get a consultant on board and get that review done, it's probably worth it. But again, I don't think we need to decide that today, but
But maybe
in
we
the
could,
future,
could we get a sense of the cost? Is it something you can help us figure out what that would cost?
I'm sure he's looking it up right now. He's on Google.
He's right, he's calling people out.
I'm sorry, I apologize. Guilty.
So, I mean, are we talking 10, 20, or are we talking 100 and 200,000? I mean,
No.
there's.
No.
Okay, I'm just saying, I know, I'm trying to.
It's about 15 to 20.
Well, that would be my thought process would be. no
Tom,
committee-
hold on, can we have, Tom, can you, they're asking what would be a rough estimate for a theater consultant for that space, not a Bushnell, but for,
Sure,
that.
probably in the ballpark of 15 to 25. So you said 10 to 20, I would say it's in that range. You're talking about $400,000 worth of scope if you have a 6 or 7%, 5, 6 or 7% fee. That's what it is.
Tom, couldn't we just get a fee broken down just for like a study exercise for a few $1,000s to say, here's what you have, here's what you can get if you have $400,000, and not
Yes.
document, not review.
Yeah, no, that's not what we're
drawings
asking
and
for.
that.
We're just asking for, yeah, like you're saying.
A reality
Right.
check.
Yes, exactly.
Right, but it'd be less than that.
Yes, I can get that pricing.
Okay, good. I think that would
Can
be
I-
helpful.
Can I recommend, as somebody who went through this with Connecticut College in their auditorium, giving clear parameters as to what level they're designing to, because it's, you know, Tom can attest to this. And Joan, you know, there's very different levels as to what type of stage lighting, what type of sound system you're getting to. So before they even provide a proposal to give you a cost on that, you need to tell them, you know, what level.
But Felicia, I think what we're saying is it's not a design service yet. We want to know what could we do for $400,000?
Yeah.
What can we do for $300,000? Right? Once we get that, then I think we can get a bit more granular as to what we need from a design parameter. I honestly, I don't know where this is going to go, but I think what we're trying to find out is what can we get for $400,000?
Is that the limit they're designing to, though? Like, I think you just need to
Well, we
settle.
don't. Yeah,
whether
we
it-
don't know. It
there's-
could be 300,000. It could be 200,000. I think what I would like to know, what this committee would want to know, is if we had $400,000 to spend on that space, what can we get? If we had $300,000, what can we get? And then they can
That's
make.
gonna be
a
the
decision
question
for-
in the future, I guarantee it, Mark. If we take this out now and we have it on the side, somebody's gonna ask us down the road exactly what will it cost, or
Right.
what are we gonna get? So I think it's worth the exercise to move forward.
And right now, we're talking about just wanting a general scope.
Right.
We don't,
Right.
we don't.
We don't want to design.
Yeah, we don't
Yeah,
want
we
to
don't.
design.
We're not designing anything.
Okay.
Yeah,
But
We just
like
wanna
our,
get something
yeah.
to-
yeah, just a general concept.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. And I think
And even
there's-
even to Mark's point, I think some leveling to it would be helpful. For 150,000, you can get something that could give you this. For 400,000, you would get this, right? And give
Or
us.
break
I
out,
mean,
or
they
have
know-
a scope.
And they know the
breakdown.
footprint we have. We're not building a brand new
Stage.
stage.
No,
We have
Right.
this footprint.
right,
The acoustical panels are gonna cost you this much
Right.
to do.
Right.
The lighting system for a basic one is this, for an
Exactly, it's
expensive
50
one
grand
is
for this, 20 grand for this,
Yeah, the
50
plain
grand.
vanilla system or the.
If we get that level of detail, that would help
Right,
us
so-
inform.
So I guess,
direction.
Tom, you'll look into that and just let the committee know, please.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I mean, to a similar degree, we could do that with the site upgrades and patio work as well. Right? Could say,
that's probably something
got-
in-house that could be done.
That is something very simple that somebody could get an estimate to.
yeah,
It's not
You-
design work that we're not familiar with, that we can work
No,
on that.
in general, what will.
Says the vice chair.
What's that?
It says the vice
Perfect.
I have,
Free is
I have-
great.
yeah, I could work on that myself and come up with some potential. Anyway. All right, are we done with item 11? So did Joe task you with trying to move forward with the building spaces and the recommendations, or is that?
No.
Because Joe just mentioned to me on the phone today, I thought that he might have talked to you about that, or.
He alluded to that, but I mean, to the earlier discussions, I agree, we do not need to be allocating.
No, and again, I don't want
functions
to, I'm not
after
trying to speak for him,
space.
because he's not here, I just.
Yeah,
No.
I think what the attempt was, is like, okay, this is what the community said they wanted. Where are the possible spaces that these places go? And the design committee's already done that. I think we just reinforce
Mhm.
that these are the pieces of the puzzle, and is there more cost? Like, how much does a kiln cost if we're gonna put a kiln? Or how much does the commercial,
Right.
that type of
I mean,
stuff.
the main objective was to take the 3.56 million and get that under the 3
We
million,
did that,
and we've done it.
yes,
Okay.
so that was good. All right,
Dates for upcoming meetings?
yes, number 12, dates for upcoming meetings.
So Mark had alluded to this previously, one of the meetings would be the page turn. And so Tom, I'll reach out to Brian and, look at setting something up with the town. Peter and Felicia, obviously that would, include the two of you. I don't know if there's anybody else, from the town standpoint that you would want to have part of that review, but, let me know, and then we can look at, setting something up in the next week or so to, coordinate that and go through that page turn to make sure everything
Yeah.
is being addressed in the CDs.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
happy to help on that. Happy to help.
We're happy to help, do it just between our department. I didn't know if it would be helpful to open it up to the board also, just to understand finishes and all of that, and a couple of other town departments, you know, I would love to get IT in just to make sure that they're kind of on board with what's going on, and any other department that's gonna have kind of a hand in this. You know, maybe they don't need to sit through a whole page turn, but at least just kind of check in and say, you know, hey, fire marshal, have you looked? Do you have anything? What my concern is that I just don't want to get to the end of a CD set and then realize that we've missed something that has, you know, big design implications that you're going to have to go back and redo because, you know, that's not fair to you. So in this pause and this juncture between DD and CD, I just want to make sure that everybody, all the stakeholders who should be giving feedback have really been sussed out and given that feedback so that once the final designs are presented, you know, everybody's kind of on board with what's in them.
Felicia, do we also then, or does somebody have to present this to planning and zoning?
No,
Not at this stage.
not at this stage, you know, like permits are permits and everything, but we don't, it's more of an operating sort of procedural of it and what the town standards are across the departments for those that will be involved. So obviously facilities is a big part of that, but I would like IT also to just, you know, understand what's going into the building. And if they say, oh, we like this equipment instead of that equipment, just make sure that that's incorporated.
Okay.
Okay.
Makes sense. I mean, Al, you alluded, does Peggy need to meet with the town
Yeah,
groups first and then,
That's her intent.
right? So I think, John, you may want to let that happen first and then maybe 2 weeks later you have the meeting. I still want to rush to a meeting.
Yeah, I think Alicia has well described that we want to make sure that all the town department heads that are gonna be involved in the operation of this building have been consulted and have given their 2 cents to the design process as to what they think is important when it comes to operating the building and what needs to be designed in for proper operation. Am I answering your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I didn't know if Peggy needs
I think-
to meet internally first and then John sets up the meeting or.
But I think
one and the
John's in
same.
touch. You're gonna be in touch with Felicia and the
If it's
first
all in
select
one,
woman's
it's fine.
office and
Yeah.
making sure
Right.
that that's all coordinated.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right, any other upcoming meetings?
The other one was, we already touched on it previously, was the discussion on the stage usage. I don't know, you know, if that's something.
I think we wait
Okay.
until we get that, this is what we can get, and then we can do
Okay.
a deeper dive onto the stage. And I think we
Yeah,
do need to
agreed.
talk about programming, because, you know, I know that there's a real need for basketball courts and space, but there's also a real need for theater space too. So I think that it's, we need to kind of do a balancing act there and see what, you know, and a pickleball court on top of it.
We got 2 of them
You got 2 of them?
in the gym, right? We're
I
painting
think
them.
there's 2, well, Tom can confirm, but I believe
Yeah,
there's 2 showing up.
Yeah, we're.
Oh, in the
Oh,
gym
yeah.
area,
Yeah,
right,
yeah, yeah,
right.
Where's lining up?
But so the question then becomes, you know, the programming of this is also gonna be kind of critical as far as timing on productions and things like that. So
Yeah.
it's just, it's a balancing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what Austin has for a setup, you know, for rental, is it
Right.
online? I don't even know how you do it, but
Right.
it's another
There's-
facility you're adding into his system.
Right. This is another facility, and each one of the facilities you can request rental online, you work with them and you say your dates, but this is something usually you, and it's gonna be starting to be programmed also by Beach and Rec, so this is part of the recreation side of things, but, you know, maybe getting in, you know, we've got there's a music group coming along the
So
shoreline.
I guess my
Okay.
question is, what information, what decision would we make? Like, we're not gonna make programming decisions.
We're not making that
No,
now.
no, but what we're gonna talk about is
Forever.
the details
No,
of the
for sure.
stage. No, we're talking about what could be done in the gym space and the programming balancing act, because. there's
But how would
real
that change
concern.
our decision of how we build the building?
Well, if they say, nope, we, you know, something, there's no way in heck we can have any community theater or anything like that in this space. Sorry, then that impacts the budget by 400,000. So, yeah, it is a big thing. So
Yeah,
that,
so-
that discussion needs to actually,
Guys, I think it's important to remember that Austin was a key contributor in the advisory committee. So the recommendations that were put together there include that kind of input on what expectations were for programming and what community needs were. He was involved with all of that.
Yeah, I guess I don't want to discount all this work that was already done. Like, if they say we need a theater and we are gonna use it, then we just trust that that was accurate and we budget for it, right? I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be simple about it. I just
no,
want to make sure we use our
I
time.
thought, no, this is not something, this was John's concern, and rightly so, considering what the feedback was from the Beach and Rec, but I think Beach and Rec is always programmed sports. So the knowledge on how to do sports and arts is gonna be a challenge, and it's gonna be something that needs to be discussed, so.
Yeah, I think there is
But
a
I think-
conversation about like what level of equipment do we put in?
Yeah, and I
that
think
sort
the
of-
level of
What kind
equipment
of
you want,
flooring
yeah.
we may put in the gym, depending on. what
Yeah,
we're
I
using
get
it for.
that.
I mean, that's kind of.
I guess that helps inform our
So you
decision.
need something
but-
that's gonna be able to also withstand, you know, chairs being put on and things like that,
Yeah,
and, you know, as far as the theater space, you're not gonna go to the level of Broadway, you want a community theater space, so you want something that can be, over time, added to, you know, because to try to buy this all at once would be fairly costly, I can tell you that right now, but there's also community theaters that have equipment and they bring it in, so you just need the space to have, you know, the lighting. Madison Lyric Stage has a full lighting on
I was
set
gonna say, some groups have all of their own equipment.
already, because that's what they do, they go and find a space to rent and they bring in their stuff, or they rent equipment for that weekend to allow,
We
so.
just need to make sure we have appropriate infrastructure to
Yeah,
have
and
a
I think-
typical lighting
And
block.
I think that's where that consultant will
Right,
help.
that's where the
us,
consultant
right?
will be able
Give
to
us
help
the
us.
Okay.
Right.
great.
Okay, perfect. All right, any other upcoming meetings?
Those are the only 2 hours, right?
Perfect. All right, moving on to public comment. Anybody from the public have any comments? You could raise your hand.
Please raise your hand, please comment here.
Nope, don't see any. I think we're good. All right, with nothing said, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Stop the
Thank
recording.
you all.
All right.